up in a house with, for lack of a better term, paranormal activity taking place. It affected me a great deal as a young kid, you know, about what's actually out there. We're very limited by our senses on what we can see and hear. There's definitely stuff that exists outside of those ranges that we are completely unaware of.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says interview me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. We've got a special guest lined up for you guys today. Thank you to all of you for all the love and support you continue to give, and I hope you guys are going to absolutely enjoy today's show. We are welcoming a longtime friend, Mr. Matt Knapp, to the show, who is, maybe you know him through his podcast, which is Bigfoot Crossroads, and he's here to talk about all the wonderful weirdness he's experienced in his journey. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Welcome to the show, Matt. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to finally be here.
Yeah, me too. And I was just a guest on your show, and we had a wonderful conversation. It's like, I just kept kicking myself, like, why didn't we do this a long time ago?
Oh, I know. I was going through the same emotions.
Yeah. It was
should have been talking a lot more for a lot longer.
Right. Well, at least we've connected now, and thanks so much for coming on my show as a retribution, I guess, or me paying my debt to you for having me on your show. But this has been a hell of a long journey for you. I remember, as I stated on your show, I remember when I was working in a cube farm, sitting and listening to you and several other shows as well. But if you don't mind a journey in the Wayback Machine here, where did all this start for you, brother?
Oh, geez. I mean, to be honest, I couldn't exactly tell you. So I grew up in a house with, for lack of a better term, paranormal activity taking place. It affected me a great deal as a young kid, you know, not understanding what was going on, being scared out of my wits, you know, at noises and things going bump in the night. Nobody to really talk to about it. I was actually raised by my great grandparents.
Oh, wow.
And they were the second owners of this home. Just kind of, you know, setting the stage a bit. My great grandmother, both of them, actually. I had two great grandmothers that were still alive whenever I was born.
Oh my God.
One of them actually lived in this house with us.
Okay.
And unbeknownst to me, she passed away whenever I was about a year and a half, I think. That's what I've been told. I was just starting, you know, to walk and get around on my own and everything.
Sure.
But she actually passed away in my bed, in my bedroom.
Ooh, okay.
Now, it's kind of weird because years later, I brought that up to my great grandmother, who was still alive well into my 20s. And it was in my 20s that I brought that up. It was just in a conversation we were having. And she got this funny look on her face, and she was like, "How did you know that?" I was like, "How did I know what?" "Well, that she passed away in your bed. We never told you that. We didn't want to tell you that because we were afraid it would scare you."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Well, I've known it my entire life."
Wow.
And I started thinking about it, and I don't know how I knew it. I'm not claiming to be psychic or anything like that.
Sure.
I just don't remember anybody ever telling me that. I just always knew it. And I really do feel that she was responsible for at least some of the activity that took place in this house.
Wow. Okay.
There was definitely kind of a dichotomy going on because it very much felt like there were two different spirits in this house. Mm-hmm. One was very calm and kind and passive, not scary at all. I mean, to a little kid, yes, but you know, reflecting back, it wasn't like trying to scare me, I don't think.
Okay.
But there was another one that was here that was just the opposite. It felt angry. It did scary stuff. Just completely different feeling overall between the two entities, I guess. But yeah, that kind of led me down the path. As I got older, I started trying to learn everything I could, going to the library and checking out books on paranormal, being a weird little kid, getting weird looks from my friends because I'm like, is your house haunted too? And they're like, what are you talking about? Ghosts aren't real. I'm like, okay, stay the night. Which, a lot of my friends growing up and everything, if they spent enough time here, they experience things as well. Pretty much anybody that spent a lot of time in this house. I still have the same house, by the way.
Oh, do you?
Wow. Yeah. I ended up inheriting it later on. And everybody's experienced stuff here.
Wow. Okay. But it's mostly, in your opinion, most of it is, all we can do is estimate or guess, but it's family related then more than likely.
Yeah, one of them.
Okay.
The other one, and this is just a guess, keep in mind, I'm in my 40s and I've spent my entire life trying to figure this house out. But like I said, my great grandparents were the second owners of the home. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, the original owners had gone out of state on vacation and got into a car accident, and the husband passed away. Oh. And the wife came home and eventually sold the home to my great grandparents.
Wow.
And so I kind of always suspected that maybe he was the spirit.
Sure.
That was kind of angry. Definitely feels like a male type energy.
Right.
Very aggressive.
Wow.
But that's just a guess.
Does the activity continue even to this day then, if you're still in the same place?
Not anywhere near what it used to be.
Okay.
But there are some things that just seem kind of weird,
right?
A little suspicious that happen from time to time. We do experience things on occasion for sure.
Wow. So what were some of the activities that you experienced when you were littler?
Yeah, we have a hallway that it's called a shotgun hallway. If you're standing at my front door and the back door is open and the front door is open, you can see straight through. Okay. The hallway goes right down the middle of the house. And it used to be carpeted, the entire house. And my bedroom was back in the back of the house, of course. And there's a little shorter hallway that goes to a bathroom outside that bedroom. And at nighttime, I could hear footsteps coming down the hallway. And I'd be laying there expecting it to be one of my grandparents going to the bathroom. And I'd just kind of be laying there on my side with my eyes open. And the footsteps would turn the corner to go into the bathroom, but there wouldn't be anybody there. And those footsteps would continue. I'd hear them stepping on the carpet all the way to my bed.
Oh, no.
And from time to time, it felt like somebody would sit down at the end of the bed.
Oh, wow.
So that was like the major thing whenever I was a kid. That's the one that really got me going.
Sure.
And then a lot of muffled voices. It sounds like a TV's on in a different room, but there's not a TV in the other room or anything. A cabinet in the kitchen gets opened on occasion. Weird bumps and noises and stuff. I mean, it's an old house. You get, your regular old house noises, but there's been a few times where it sounds like something falls on the floor, like a weighted object of some kind, but nothing's on the floor anywhere. Nothing's fallen or anything like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We've had the bathroom door close a few times on its own, like completely shut and latch.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. Just voices mostly, just, normal ghost stuff, really. A few people have seen some things, glimpses of things here and there. There's that hallway that I was talking about. There's also a giant mirror that's on one entire wall of it, about halfway up, all the way to the ceiling.
Oh, and, fantastic.
Yeah, that's not spooky at all. And there's been quite a few times in my life where if you're in one of the back bedrooms, you can see out the door and into the hallway mirror. And on occasion, out of the corner of your eye, you see what looks kind of like an older woman standing there looking at you in the mirror in the reflection. And as soon as you turn your head and look up at the mirror to see who it is, there's nothing there.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take in, especially being a young man. How and of course you and I both probably talked to plenty of people that their activity started at a young age too. And it does make you think, how different life becomes for some people that are exposed to this stuff. And of course you have firsthand experience, but it must have been, did you grow up in a state of stress then?
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, there was a period of time whenever I was very depressed. I don't know if it was something that was just, we've obviously learned that there is such thing as just like sort of a clinical depression that just happens to people, a type of, illness. So I don't know how much was caused by it directly, but I know there was a lot of depression revolving around my friends. I'm worried about what they're thinking about me whenever I ask them about things, or, I tell them stories. At first everybody's always interested, oh, fun, a scary story. And then it's kind of like you keep talking about it and the facial expressions change, because now they're realizing like, okay, well, this guy really thinks this stuff is going on.
Right.
And, I go to my grandparents. My great grandfather wasn't having it. He didn't have anything to say about it.
Okay.
My great grandmother was just, well, those are just guardian angels looking out for you. Nothing to be afraid of. Just ignore them.
Okay.
And then later on, I could talk to my other family members because they had all experienced things in this house. So that helped a bit. But yeah, growing up, I wouldn't talk about it for a long time.
Sure.
Just because I was afraid of what people were thinking. And
absolutely,
it made me feel a little crazy, to be honest.
Right. That seems to be something that is a common thread through all of this. And I think now is probably a better time than ever before, because I think more people are having these discussions than ever before. But I think in a large part, most people that experience things, and myself included, when I was talking about my experiences, and I'm sure this is your case as well, but you really don't know how to process it because most other people are not familiar with it. I mean, they're just, you might as well tell them that you took a walk on Mars,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially whenever I was younger, and whenever I say younger, I mean preteens.
Sure.
Because it took me a while to understand that this wasn't like a normal thing. I was an only child. I was raised by my great grandparents. Like I said, I had my friends at school. I had a cousin that was like my best friend. And he was part of the family. So obviously he knew about this stuff, and he had his own experiences in this house. But, the kids at school and stuff, I just didn't know that it wasn't like a known thing that a house could be haunted. Like because you hear about haunted houses and stuff as a little kid, and I don't know. I just thought it was like a normal thing for people to experience these things. I didn't realize that there was like a cutoff of where for most people it's just entertainment and something silly to laugh at and not real. It's just fun to be scared every now and then, with a ghost story or something. But for me, it wasn't like that.
Right. Yeah. This is your reality, for God's sakes, And it's kind of neat, I think, that we can have these discussions now, and by a large part, I think by shows like yours and many others, that, you know, we're having these conversations, and we're, you know, finding that people want to share their experiences. And how many times you personally, and I'm curious what you're going to say, I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but how many times have you talked to an experiencer of some of this weirdness that we cover, and then after the recording's done, or even before it's done, you get the old, oh my God, it feels so good to finally talk about this. I haven't talked about this for decades. And you know, and it feels so cathartic. You know, how many times have you heard that?
I mean, just about every single time, to be honest. Yeah, I was recording with a guy yesterday. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the show, he had actually been on Sasquatch Chronicles before.
Okay.
As many of my guests have. And, you know, just kind of out of nowhere, he just started thanking me, you know, what you do is such a huge help. You know, it really helps people. It's like going to therapy, blah, blah, blah. And it kind of caught me off guard, you know, even though, you know, like I said, pretty much every person that comes on tells me that after we get done recording. This guy said it on air and everything while we were in the middle of recording. And I told him, I said, you know, I've said this to other people, but first off, thank you. You know, I appreciate the sentiment, but it's also for me, like I get just as much out of it.
Right.
It helps me. It helps me understand and untangle, you know, the things that I've been through, the things that I've experienced. And it serves as therapy for me. It's allowing me to talk to somebody else about something you can't just walk up to somebody and start a conversation without worrying about what they're going to think, or in a lot of times, you know, the repercussions that will come from having those conversations.
Right. Yeah. It's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing to be able to find a group or groups of people or like-minded individuals that have similar backgrounds, and to share it. And much like you, that's kind of my motivation through all of this, is that, you know, I'm not doing it because it's so important for me to get attention or to make a name for myself, but I just want to understand what it is we're experiencing in these many different phenomena. It's like, what's going on? Because it's I really believe it's not as random as it might appear, that there's maybe a bigger meaning for it all. Like it's demonstrating the you know, a more true nature of our reality than what we've been led to believe. And it's powerful stuff, I think. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's been a large focus of mine for probably about the past year, whenever it comes to my own podcast. Something that I'm sure you're aware of. A lot of people are aware of this. It's no secret, but for some reason you run across people, and I'm one of those people, who doesn't just experience one thing.
Yeah.
They have a lifetime of experiences in various different categories, not just with ghosts, but, you know, usually you run across someone that, just using Bigfoot as an example, someone who's had a Bigfoot sighting. They've also experienced paranormal activity. They've also seen a UFO. It's weird how it seems like, at least for some people, they are more susceptible to these encounters with the unexplained than others. And I don't know what that connection is, but there's obviously something there, because it happens just way too often.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I marveled at that very same thing. And I've noticed that as well, that a lot of the people that I talk to, they'll say, hey, you know, I'd like to be a guest on your show. And then they get on the show, and they may outline one or two things in an email, but they'll get on the show and suddenly have this whole laundry list of things they've experienced. And you're right. It's almost like one of these phenomena is the gateway drug for all of them. It's like, you know, once somebody sees a Bigfoot, they're more likely to see a UFO, they have a ghostly experiences or whatever. It's like something maybe it's some fundamental change in the person, in, if we have a frequency that we operate in, maybe these events kind of change that, and it opens an awareness that we didn't have before. And so suddenly we become aware of these more prevalent, subtle energies that are around us. But I find it fascinating too, because you're right. It's not usually just one thing. It'll be, it'll start with one thing and then just spiderweb into several different things. It's like, oh, I'll tell you about the time I saw a UFO. Oh, and there's this one time that I had Dogman in my backyard. And then, it's like, wow, and it, I suppose to the skeptics, that seems like, oh, well, isn't that convenient? You just got all this bucket full of stuff that you've experienced, but I think there is something to that. You're absolutely right that somehow the people that experience these things, ourselves included, are fundamentally changed by these experiences and probably make us so much more receptive to the other things around.
I don't know if this is something you've noticed, but for me personally, like I said, growing up as a child, there was a large period of time where I shut down and wouldn't talk about it for fear of what others thought or would say. But then later on in my teens, I became more open to it because I started noticing something. And this is before the internet. So take that out of the equation. Jeez, I sound old now. But people who have experienced these things, not only does it open them up for other experiences, but there's something that happens where these people start gravitating towards one another, and you end up meeting people that have experienced these things as well. Mm-hmm. And they're just random strangers that you just fall into a conversation with. And the next thing you know, you're swapping stories back and forth about all this weird stuff that you've both experienced in your life.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I guess my situation is a little bit different because I honestly never started openly talking about my own experiences, except with the close one or two people in my life that, we were able to discuss these things before. But I pretty much started being much more open about it after doing the show. And quite honestly, I was like, well, I was interested because of the things I'd experienced, but I was really reluctant to talk about my own experiences because I was thinking, well, what does that look like to somebody on the outside looking in? It's like, oh, sure. Oh, you've had all these experiences and you have your own show. Of course. It just seems like it's just so much, rather than just somebody who's an enthusiast. But once I did finally just start, going, you know what, I'm going to, because when you're talking to people, I think it helps them to understand that you can relate to their experiences because, again, with all of this stuff, you feel like an island until you find those other people that you're talking about. But then once I started sharing my own experiences, it really had this domino effect on not only the people I was talking to, but my audience. Suddenly was like, oh, it's neat. I really appreciate you. They shared your experiences. And I got this influx of messages. And I was like, wow, well, maybe it's okay if I do that too, but I was hesitant because I didn't want it to come off as, well, isn't that convenient? You got a show and you've got all these experiences. I didn't know how that would be received, but I was really thrilled with the fact that it was received so well. And it actually helped people to be maybe more open to talking to me because I wasn't a brick wall. I was somebody that had similar experiences or experiences as well that could relate. And so, yeah, it is funny though. But a lot of it is like you're saying, it's just, it may not be in such a forum. My own experience is only through the show, but I find it interesting what you're saying that even without a platform on which you're talking, people still will find each other just this, and maybe it's again, I use that term a lot, frequency, but I think there is something pretty profound to it, that we do have our own personal frequency for things, and maybe that's how we develop a worldview. But you're right. I think, like-minded people will gravitate together.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. I use the word frequency a lot too, whenever it comes to this subject.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's what it is, but the point is that there is something.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you spend enough time in this subject matter, as we do, talking to all these different people who have experienced these things, you see it. You see whatever that thing is that binds all of this stuff together, and you start realizing there's kind of a pattern forming here.
Right.
Where on some level, at least, all of this stuff is related.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how. How is me growing up in a house with the possible spirit of my deceased great-great-grandmother connected to the possibility of a intelligent being from another universe piloting a spacecraft to this planet, but somehow that stuff is all connected.
Yeah.
And it seems to be tied into a giant bipedal hair-covered creature running around in the woods at night.
Yeah. That's the other thing that really has blown me away. And, I'm sure it's exactly what you're talking about, but there does seem to be bleed through of phenomena. Like a ghost in many ways is not unlike some alien experiences that people have with, these other intelligences, like, seeing them come through the walls or disapparating and apparating in front of them. And, any number of similarities between a haunting and a close encounter of some kind with what we consider extraterrestrial intelligences, but, we don't know that. Then, you hear those bleed throughs as well in the Bigfoot phenomena. And it's like, they've talked to people that have witnessed them, basically just fading in front of them in a wide open space. And it's like, well, how do you wrap your head around that? And I don't know, but it is interesting that so much of these varied phenomena still have, they still have similarities in many regards. And I find that very interesting, that they're not only related in their exposure to people, and, one person experiences one thing and they experience other things, but some of the behaviors are very consistent between them or what they experience,
I've got some friends that specifically Jonathan Dodd. Jonathan Dodd is a fairly well-known cryptid artist at this point. He did my logo work. I talk to him regularly. He went with some people of the Moth Boys podcast.
Okay.
I believe they were in a place called Sherman, New York. They were out there on a cryptid excursion. They were looking for a cryptid. And this just happened this past week.
Oh, wow.
So I hope I'm not leaking any information they don't want to. But while they were out there, they had a UFO encounter. Strange lights in the sky. They all observed it. They were able to get at least photographs, maybe some video. I don't know. And I was talking to Jonathan about it, because I wanted to know, hey, what happened? What did you see?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that struck me about it, which it's their story to tell, but, strange lights in the sky. He said what was really freaky about it is it seemed to have intelligence behind it, like it was reacting to what we were doing. And you hear that sometimes,
right?
About, something in the sky, a UFO, for lack of a better term, reacting intelligently to the observer.
Yes.
And whenever you really think about that, so you saw these lights up in the sky, there could be 20 people in a 10-mile radius seeing it at the same time.
Right.
From different perspectives. So how is it reacting intelligently to this particular witness? And what is the experience of the other observers at the time? Do they see it reacting intelligently to them?
Right. Good point.
And the idea of it being some sort of spacecraft piloted by aliens, at that point, I mean, I don't even know. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, there's a huge possibility that it could be something entirely different than what we're thinking it is, especially at that point.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because as you were talking about that, I was thinking of, well, Stephen Greer has that, what does he call it? Something 5, CE5 or SE5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or what his contact regimen, where it has to do with meditation and spirituality, but somehow, and I've talked to people that have taken part in this, and they swear that this is a very real thing, and they've had very real experiences as a result of it. But you're right. Is that ET at that point, or is it something else? And I don't know where the differentiation lies. And that's almost the maddening part of all of this, is that you just never seem to be any closer to any resolution for what we're dealing with.
Not a single inch.
Right. And it's like we move further away with every realization. It's like, oh no, we're losing this battle.
I mean, I hear lots of brilliant theories.
Sure.
Amazing speculation, stuff that just flat out makes sense. There's even sometimes, a few tricks up our sleeves actually work every now and then.
Right.
But none of it has ever gotten us any closer to understanding or knowing what we're actually experiencing.
Right. Right.
It's delivered no answers. That can be applied to any of these subjects.
Right. Do you think it's simply because it's more of that we're just not capable of understanding it with our current worldview or view of our place in the cosmos? Is it we're just not ready, that kind of thing? Or, do you have any thoughts on that?
There's a lot of different ways to take it.
Sure.
Part of me, as a person who believes in a higher intelligence, I won't get too religious or anything, but
sure.
Part of me wonders if it's that way just because we're not supposed to know. And so there's really nothing we can do about it.
Right.
We can see it, we can encounter it, we can experience it, but that knowledge is not for us. And then there's also the possibility that it's just something that we don't understand because we're nowhere close to having that knowledge yet or learning, about what's actually out there. We're very limited by our senses on what we can see and hear. There's definitely stuff that exists outside of those ranges that we are completely unaware of. And if our biological senses can't detect these things, then we don't really have any clue what's going on. And I think it's very egotistical of us to assume for 1 second that we really know anything or have anything figured out. As a civilization, we just haven't even been around that long to kind of figure anything out.
Right.
And the stuff that we do think we know, we're learning every day that, well, we are kind of wrong about this or that. And people are constantly arguing and debating everything, factual or not.
Right. Yeah, it seems like we're way too rooted in our own ego to really open our minds to this stuff. It might seem unrelated, but I thought this was kind of interesting because this was a personal revelation of mine, and it was, I like to think, or I did like to think. I guess I don't necessarily harbor those illusions anymore, but I used to like to think that, oh, we've come so far. We are so more advanced and a better people than our ancient predecessors were. I can't imagine how, a rudimentary life was, or, and of course, through technology and stuff, our standard of living is, light years away from where it was. But interpersonally, I don't think we've changed that much, if at all, because and where this revelation hit me was there was apparently a peat bog in the UK that was somehow during some work, they found some old Roman, our antiquities that were there that had been preserved in the peat over these, centuries. And so, or maybe thousands of years. I don't know, when the dates were, basically during the Roman occupation when they built Hadrian's Wall in the UK. But in there, they found actual mail or correspondence that were written from people that were up there on the front to be mailed to people back home, or vice versa. Maybe it was a letter that was sent to one of the people on the front. And it was very interesting because the dialogue could have happened yesterday. And I guess, there was nothing that was anything but normal about it, but it was just it struck me as odd. I was expecting it to be so much foreign to my thinking than just hearing. It was like eavesdropping on a telephone conversation, just basically the people were talking in the same manner, in the same way as they do now. And I don't know why that occurred to me or why that was such a surprise, but it really was. I just thought that we were such a different people through all of this time, but we're really not. We're kind of the same people with better toys.
Well, that's one of the things that kind of really bothers me. Whenever it comes to history, I mean, we don't even know our own history.
Sure. Yeah.
We have a general idea, a general grasp or whatever, but apparently back in the day, they weren't documenting every single thing that happened like they do now.
Right. Yep.
And as technology advances, everything moves over to the internet for safekeeping. You're seeing less and less books being written. Books are just a dying thing,
Right.
Obviously, I think they will stand the test of time to a certain degree. But a lot of things, if it hasn't been recorded on the internet, it's just going to get lost. And then, God forbid, something ever happened to the internet, and then all that information's gone.
Right.
So then where are we at? What are we going to go by then? What happens to be preserved enough to make, bits and pieces out of a puzzle 1,000 years from now? And those people, what will they think about, civilization as we see it right now?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the people of the Roman Empire thought they were on the leading edge of discovery and everything else.
Sure. Yeah. And they probably were, by comparison to a lot of the other cultures that were around. They had order and they had systems in place. But yeah, I've got to ask you, because it kind of brought up a question to me that I find really interesting. But are you familiar with the artifacts out of place or out of place artifacts phenomena?
Yeah, a little bit.
So like the London hammer is the big one from London, Texas, where these people found the stick protruding from a rock and brought it home, and they broke it open, and embedded in this rock was an actual hammerhead. And of course the stick was the handle that had broken off over, whatever time. Well, they dated the rock, and apparently that rock would have been about, 400 million years old. And so and then, in other cases, there was machined aluminum found next to mastodon skulls as they're digging and extracting mastodon skulls. And it's like, oh my God, so obviously you're right. I don't think we know our history, but it seems like there's been a hell of a lot more history than we've been led to believe by a long shot. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, or it's a sign that we eventually figure out time travel.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sure.
One or the other. I'm intrigued by all of that sort of thing. They found quite a few things that appear to be some sort of mechanical or machine device.
Sure.
Like you're saying, embedded in the earth at a time where there's no chance for it to be there, but yet there it is.
Right. Right.
The pyramids, all of the megalithic structure stuff.
Sure.
I've always been fascinated by all that stuff. And I don't know if it was the ghost stuff. I assume so, because like I said, back in the day, I was going to the library or the bookstore, and all those subjects were kind of crammed into the same area.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just always interested in all that stuff. And the pyramids especially. I mean, there's, I know that's kind of like the generic answer,
Sure.
but come on,
Right.
one of the biggest things on the planet, in one of the oldest civilizations, areas of civilization, and we don't have any clue.
Right.
How did it happen? And then you have a lot of names are escaping me right now that I'm on the spot, but the different structures where you have like, a huge stone that's been like precision cut. It looks like it's been cut with lasers, and,
Right. Yeah.
on different fulcrums and levers and stuff like that. That it's just, how did they do that? We have no clue. We don't have an understanding of it now.
Are you kidding, Matt? They use bronze tools to do that.
Yeah, sure.
They were able to chisel away solid granite with bronze tools.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But it does seem like it's either that we've intentionally been fed a bill of goods on this deal, or there's just that much ignorance going on in our quote unquote official bodies. But there does seem to be a hell of a lot more, even in that regard. Like perhaps a civilization has been rebooted, and then you got to wonder who did the rebooting.
Yeah, that's the one where I start getting scared.
Yeah, me too. Because it's like,
I don't even like the Matrix rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I don't want nothing to do with that rabbit hole. It terrifies me.
Yeah, no, it is. It is pretty disconcerting because at any point, it seems there's a precedent at least. But I like what you said about time travel. That's another aspect of it, is that maybe the old ancient astronauts theory was just misplaced time travelers that decided, well, we're stuck, we might as well make the best of it, and they became revered as some kind of deities. But I don't know, it's a strange thing.
I mean, I know this is your show, but I got to ask, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of like, lost technology? Not necessarily a Matrix reboot, but do you think there's a possibility that civilization could have advanced further than we understand, and that something happened and wiped everything out and we started over?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that seems to be the most probable answer for all this strangeness. And Puma Punka is one of those sites you were referring to, where these amazingly intricately carved pieces of granite are like fit like puzzle pieces that apparently they couldn't even duplicate it today, is what I've heard. And how did they lift those 130, 140 ton pieces of granite into place, to fit on a wall with precision like that they can't even put like a piece of paper between the rocks? And it's like, man, how did they do that? So yeah, it seems, and I'm not saying it's the same technologies, but there seems to have been some kind of advanced knowledge, and there's references to that in even some ancient Buddhist recordings or writings that talked about them using sound in order to manipulate and move objects and to do some pretty incredible things. And I think that even more recently we've seen that sound experiments can levitate, small objects in the scale that these experiments have been done. But it does show that there's precedence to this, and and even like ancient sites that are dug up and found to have advanced knowledge of astronomy that we've only recently discovered. That to me is absolutely amazing. Like the Pleiades and such was recorded in several different ancient cultures that these are basically just Stone Age or barely better cultures that somehow had knowledge of these things. But they did talk about these beings that came from the stars, and many of them mentioned that or something very similar. So it does seem like there was at least some help, that they had some help. But and in that same regard, I don't mean to hog the whole interview here, but
no, it's your show, man.
It makes me wonder though, like, so if there were extraterrestrials that came and were so actively a part of our development, where did they go? Why did they quit?
Yeah. Yeah. What happened?
Yeah, because obviously we're doing a bang up job here without them, and that's tongue in cheek, of course. But it seemed like they were very geared towards, directing our development, if that is indeed the case. And then they just kind of quit, or what happened? So,
I mean, experiment for the sake of experiment.
maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Maybe we're like a cosmic petri dish here, Matt.
Maybe so.
They're just swinging by to check on the experiment after they introduce the proteins and watching how the bacteria here grows. I don't know.
I mean, one of the conversations I've had with people about Bigfoot, being related to humans, if you really think about it, we're the ones that don't fit, not the Bigfoot.
Right.
The Bigfoot, for all pretense and purposes, at least appear like they belong here,
Yes.
But we're so far separated, not, genetically, of course, based on our own scientific understandings, but we're so different than everything else on the planet. It's kind of weird.
It is pretty tragic because, you think about it, like almost every other being that's born on this planet, even as a newborn, a lot of things are walking within minutes of being born.
Yeah.
There's, things that can swim right after they're born. And yet we're these blobs of tissue for quite a while before we even learn to roll over and sit up and things like that. And then we're like, naturally, we're not geared towards survival in any place.
No, not at all.
We're born naked without any form of, heat and control, or we don't have hair, we develop hair over time, but we're born absolutely helpless. And then even when we're adults, we're like, I don't know, just under turtle as far as our physical prowess, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
how the hell did we climb on top of all of these food chains? It's quite a conundrum, brother.
Fire and weapons.
Yeah, yeah, there is that. God knows we can think up stuff. We're pretty good at that. But, how did we even get that far? When you think back, with what our natural abilities are, we're absolutely...
It seems like there was a big jump that happened somewhere.
Right. Yes, it does. Yep. And have you ever heard of Lloyd Pye?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Everything You Know Is Wrong is his famous speech, and he's passed on now for many years, but... If any of you listening get a chance, go on the internet, on YouTube or whatever, and look for Lloyd Pye, P-Y-E, Everything You Know Is Wrong, or something like that. And it's this great talk that he does just about that. And I found it absolutely compelling, the points that he brought up on there.
But then you have to ask, you mentioned this earlier. If they are keeping information from us, if they're controlling the narrative for history, we obviously know they do it in other aspects. Why are they doing that? Why are they hiding this history? Why are they hiding these facts from us?
Right.
If that is the case.
Sure. Yeah. And it boggles my mind, but I guess it seems like everything here is geared towards some form of commerce, and I'm not like a socialist by any means, but I've certainly seems to be power, behind revenue, and those that control the information control probably a lot more. And I don't know. I've heard all of the scuttlebutts that people claim, and I don't pretend to be smart enough to have any real educated opinion about those things. But yeah, it does make you wonder why. Why wouldn't they just come clean and say, well, this is actually what we know? But then look at the disclosure things that have been happening lately, with the UFO stuff. And they sat and called people idiots for generations for saying they saw lights in the sky. And it's like, oh, better get old Jimmy there, his tinfoil hat. It was just a tongue-in-cheek response. And now suddenly it's credible. Because someone somewhere decided, well, it's got to be credible now. So it's like if a switch was flipped. And so why didn't they before that? I don't know. But, again, you and I were talking about it when I appeared on your show. And it's like, basically, I think people can handle a hell of a lot more than they're given credit for. But they use that excuse like, well, we'd let people know, but there'd be rioting in the streets and chaos and pandemonium. And when the Tic Tac craft were acknowledged and suddenly it became more of a serious topic, for the most part, it was just a news blip, and that was about it.
I felt like a jackass.
Did you?
I told my wife, I was like, hey, I want you to see this, and I showed her the article, and I was like, look, this is real. This is happening. Mm-hmm. You need to get ready because people are going to flip out. Mm. We've never seen anything like this before. This isn't a joke article. Right. This isn't, an April Fool's news story, where they're looking at with tongue in cheek and everything. Right. They're being serious about this. They're actually talking about it. They're talking about UFOs on all the major news networks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then nothing happened. Nobody cared. And I felt so stupid. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, now I sound like the weirdo. But that's weird. I mean,
yeah.
Didn't you? I agree with what you're saying. I do believe we're capable of handling a lot more than they give us credit for. Mm-hmm. I also think a lot of the populace is complete idiots and stupid. But I mean, didn't you expect more?
Yeah,
I mean, people just don't care.
Well, either it's they don't care, or there was a hell of a lot more people that believed in it secretly than would openly admit it. And they were like, "Yeah, thought so." I don't know. I mean, it could be both. But
maybe they just still think it's a joke, and they're just waiting for the true ship to come down on the White House lawn or something.
Yeah, I mean, God only knows. I've heard lots of different theories on this, and I can't remember where. Some of it was through shorts or whatever, but some guy was claiming, the reason that they're coming forward now is because they have to. Because when the agreements were made back in, a lot of people refer to the Greada Treaty with Eisenhower and stuff, but agreements were made that people would know about this truth that these beings are here. And they agreed to let us handle it. Well, time's running short on that agreement. So they were apparently thinking that suddenly the skies would fill with these, ships or something to that regard. And maybe that's the urgency. But I don't know. I just, that's kind of the problem with our current age is that there's too much information. And unfortunately, not all of it's good information.
Right.
So it's hard to know. And one of the things that I've thought about a lot lately is for about the last year or so is that, the biggest tragedy is of our modern age is that we don't really know what truth is anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's just psychology built into every story, and there's spins and twists, and they're trying to, manipulate people into lines of thinking and stuff. And it's just like, oh my God, it's just this big mind screw anymore,
It's almost like we got too clever for our own good.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of the sources that, 50 years ago were our sources of information that we trusted as a society, we have now learned that you can no longer completely trust those sources.
Right. Right.
Which is sad, but it's also sad that even though we know that, I see it daily. Yeah. People get their information from one source and they just believe whatever's told to them. They don't look for anything on their own. Mm-hmm. And that's it. They can't be bothered with the trouble. Everybody wants everything delivered to them instantly. Right. And they can't be troubled with looking into something on their own. The problem with that is this isn't just a YouTube video we're talking about. This is politics, economy, everything.
Sure.
So much important information that's just being manipulated and marketed and used as a tool to gain revenue and power.
Right. Yep. I think you're dead on it, brother. And I don't know what the answer is necessarily, but yeah, it seems it doesn't matter where you get your information from now, that whoever's delivering it wants you to think a certain way. Yeah. And the days of the media being the watchdog and the balancing authority to help balance the truth and to keep things stable has been bought and sold a million times, and so you don't know who you're dealing with. But yeah, it's unfortunate. But in any case, it's a hell of a journey, wouldn't you say?
Oh man. Yeah. I can't imagine my life without this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine that we've made it this many years and haven't been on each other's show before, but I'm glad we've done it now, brother. And I would love to have you come back regularly if you're willing to, because I mean, there's so much more to discuss if you.
Oh yeah, I'm down. I mean, we kind of got sidetracked here.
That's the beauty of these shows, though, is we don't really have a formula. We just like to have discussions, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've got stories and tales that you wouldn't believe.
Well, again, please come back. I'd love to have you back, as soon as you can, and we'll continue your journey. But yeah, brother, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media, such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.